Hi, welcome back to another episode of Commanding the Market on the Librarian of Alexandria. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Nathan Hale, and I'm joined by my co-host, Trent Richardson.
Hey, how's it going, Hale? How you doing?
It's going really well, man. Have you seen what some of those specs we made have been doing?
I have, and I hate to say it, but your specs have been going off the hook. I mean, wow.
Now that we're keeping score here, but yeah.
Hale 2, Trent 0. That's the score.
I would say 0. You're just it's tortoise and hare right now. Right now, I'm off to a quick start, but slow and steady wins the race. This is investing, right?
That's right.
But there have been some exciting movements on some of our specs. You want to talk about one of them?
Yeah. So first and foremost, Leonin War Leader. When you mentioned Leonin War Leader the first time, I was like, yeah, whatever. It's fine. It's an M19 card. Trash. But it's up 80% since the last time we recorded, which is 1 week ago.
Yeah.
So it was at 270, I think, when we recorded last week.
Yeah, thereabouts.
And now it's at 478. So
wow.
Almost a double up. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I'm pretty amazed by that, quite honestly.
I did not expect quite that hike this quick either, to be honest. I figured there'd be maybe at most a 25% hike week over week, but 80%?
Yeah.
That even surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't ask for much more. I mean,
well,
if we don't get
could we not?
viewership, if we don't get viewership based on just that spec alone, I don't know what you people are doing out there.
I don't know.
I mean, you guys just obviously don't care about your Magic finances. So, what can I say?
Well, before we get into the newest specs we have for this week, and there's some good ones, let me tell you, there's one other card that has week over week. We've mentioned it was an early spec for me. I say early, I spec'd on it in June. And we didn't per se spec on this show about it, but we did mention it, and we are even giving one away at the end of the show today, as well as a Sublime Epiphany and a signed alternate art island from M21 to someone who will be announced at the end. You'll have to stick around to find out what their specs were, which are some juicy specs, I might add.
Juicy.
But that other spec we had that has just been insane. In fact, I think it's at the top for the week as far as standard cards growing, and that is Shark Typhoon. I always want to call it Sharknado. I have to catch myself. It's the meme. It's always going to be known as Sharknado for all Magic players out there. But that card is now sitting at $9.99.
Are you sure you want to give that away? I mean, you announced you were giving it away at like $5, which I'm sure was an okay thing to be given away.
I've said it. I got to hold to it, So, to that lucky winner, you got a spicy card coming your way. And I will say I played it last night in the Commander game we were playing online. And it performed admirably.
Yes, even with missed activations.
Yes, which I am notorious for. Trigger? What's a trigger? Isn't that a horse?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not going to lie. I was tempted to have my wife go and comment a bunch of times on our video with some spicy specs so I could get that Sharknado. But
yeah,
I figured that's just not fair.
Right.
So congratulations to the winner of that, by the way. You're getting one spicy meatball.
Yep. But you know what? Without further ado, let's get into this. I'd like to start with some uncommonly good specs. And this first one's one I spec'd into way early on. And that one's been great. And just when I compared it to similar cards from an older set, this seemed like a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. So what I'm referring to here are the talismans from Modern Horizons. In particular, there's 3 of them. Creativity, Hierarchy, and Conviction. For those of you Magic players out there who might not be familiar with the Talisman, is, you need to be familiar if you're not. They are mana rocks that drop for 2 mana, and they will tap for a colorless, or they can tap for one of 2 different colors, and they ping you for 1 damage when you do so. They range in price. The original ones were from Mirrodin, and they range in price from currently around $1.50, $2 to as high as $10.50. That being Talisman of Progress from Mirrodin, which has not seen a reprint before. And it is played in roughly 13,000 decks, or 13% of decks that could run it. Now, as far as these other ones go, tell us first about Creativity. That's probably the best spec of the 3.
I would say so. It's going to be played in a lot more decks than really any of the other ones, just because of its color combinations. And just like the $10 Talisman you talked about earlier from original Ravnica, I believe. Mirrodin. Red blue is, all over the place in Commander.
Oh yeah.
Just the fact that it is a blue talisman, even in a mono blue deck, this could be consideration.
Well, you can't run in mono blue because it does have the red pip, but.
True.
But red-blue spellslingers are constantly looking for mana, and they don't have easy access to it. Really, Artifacts is the only place they can get their ramp from, other than Red's ability to mana flare. Talisman of Creativity is currently at $1.45, and I want to point out all these have had a double up in the last 6 months. And I think that's in large part due to Modern Horizons going out of print, and it's starting to become more scarce. It's not quite there yet, but it's getting there. And as that happens, these are going to continue to go up because these are Commander staples. And Creativity is currently the most expensive of the 5 from the set at $1.45 market price. There's and it's running nearly 1,700 decks, or 17% of decks that could run it, which is a full 4,000 more than the $10.50 Talisman of Progress from Mirrodin. On TCG currently, you can go on and buy it in bulk, a bulk buy for $1.04 at the lowest. Highly recommended.
Yeah, that's a good point. Buying them at $1.04, especially what we've seen with the original Talisman. Even though some of the lesser valued Talisman are, I think the Talisman of Impulse is only like $1 or something.
Yeah.
Even at $1 and being the worst of the original Talisman, you're still getting a heck of a deal on the best Talisman of the new cycle of Talisman.
Yeah.
So, I was with you originally on these. I went to a bunch of LGSs and searched through their boxes of commons and uncommons after Modern Horizons released, and picked up every one I could find. And I probably paid 10-15 cents a piece for them.
Wow, I ended up paying $0.25 for mine, but I don't regret that either.
Yeah, so I've got tons and tons of these. They slip into every single Commander deck I build. It's just great. And especially if you can't, if you don't want to pay for a $5 Talisman of Dominance, these new ones work quite well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
couple others. I wouldn't spec on all 5 of them at this point. Not that it would be a bad spec, but I think the best 3 at this point to get are the ones without green. So that would also be the Talisman of Hierarchy, which has a market price right now of 96 cents. And is running nearly 13,000 decks, 13% of all decks on EDH Rec. And you can buy it in bulk on TCG Player for 78 cents currently. Right. So again, another steal of a deal on that one. It's, like I said, 13% of decks. That's the same as the Talisman of Progress from Mirrodin.
Right. Yep.
And then lastly,
the Talisman of Conviction, the red-white one, is around $1 right now as well.
And run, I think, also in 13 to 14% of decks that could run it.
Yep.
Yeah. Also available for bulk buy at about 75 cents for that one. And that's the red-white one. which are two colors that really have difficulty once again with ramping and fixing. So it's kind of a must in any of those decks that are specifically red-white. Not to say it can't be run in, say, red, white, blue or something like that, with additional talisman support.
Right. Yeah, I think no matter what, I don't see these ever going under what they currently are, unless they just continue to print the heck out of these.
Yeah, they would have to crazy print them. And the truth is, the original talismans, they haven't printed heavily. In fact, they tend to print the signets more often than talismans. And in my opinion, talismans are better. That's my personal opinion. People could argue, but I often have had a play where if I could tap that signet for 1 mana after I dropped a land in a Soul Ring, I'd have yet another play. But because I couldn't just tap it on its own for a mana, I didn't have that play.
Right. Yeah, that happens quite often. Or you accidentally play the wrong basic without thinking about your next play, and now you don't have that colored mana that you're using the color that you need to use to pump into the signet that you won't get that color out of. So the talisman are fantastic and a great pickup. If not just because you like playing Commander, you are going to need these rocks. I mean, so either way, I think everyone should have at least 20 of each.
Oh yeah, if you play Commander and have lots of decks, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even if you don't, it's just good to spec on, sit on, and turn around and sell it in 2-3 years. You'll triple up easily. Barring significant reprints.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to just bring up while we're talking about this, speaking of significant reprints or in need of significant reprints, in my opinion, I keep hoping that WotC's going to reprint the Painlands. And back in the day when they came out, I hated the Painlands. I was like, these are terrible, because I came from dual lands, and suddenly they're like, no, we're going to make you pay life to get that color now. I was like, these are terrible. These are terrible. And there was a stigma for years around Painlands because they were the immediate follow-up solution to the power, the OP of dual lands, original dual lands.
Right.
But now I'm like, I've got decks where I need that colorless because of things like a certain Eldrazi that need colorless mana to actually activate or play. But I'm in an actual colored deck. I don't want to run waste. There's only so many lands that I'm going to put in support of colorless mana before it starts to hurt that I don't have colored mana for my other things. And those Painlands are the perfect solution for those. But I don't know if you've been paying attention. They're going up and up and up in prices. There's only a couple you can get on the cheap. Yavimaya Coast has seen a lot of reprints. I think there's one other seen significant reprints, and all the others are now going $6 to $10 and climbing.
Right, and actually, even at that price point, and this could maybe be a segue into our next topic. Typically Ice Age, the cards have just not done anything. But I've noticed over the last year, Ice Age has started to trickle up a little bit. They're starting to become a little bit more scarce. They're the older border. People are starting to spec on those. So it might be worth it to go ahead and pick up those Ice Age versions of those Painlands. I know I got them when they were just a couple of bucks, maybe a year and a half ago or so, and I got one of each just because I liked the art on them. But it's paying off now. I think I think one of them is around $8 or $9.
I think the Underground River. That one's at 10, and I think the black-red one, Sulphur Springs. I think that one's also, particularly the Foglio art, the original art, has really climbed.
Yeah,
I did love that art.
It's a great art, fantastic.
Demon sitting in a hot
I think
spring.
even at this point, at $9, it's still a good buy-in. Because
they're showing reluctance to reprint.
While they're not reserved list, hint, hint. while they're not reserve list, they are older printings of these cards and first printings of these cards, and certainly something that you may want to buy into at now.
Yeah, and as an addition to that, let me add, in Commander, in my opinion, the most important thing is a land entering the battlefield untapped, or it having the ability to, which is why dual lands fetch obviously OP, super high price on top of being reserve list. But followed by that, you've got your shock lands, you've got your fetch lands, which will get you a land into play untapped with the color you need.
Right.
You've got your, in my opinion, the next best would be the ones from Battle Bond. If you have multiple opponents, it comes in untapped.
Right.
Followed very closely by, believe it or not, the BFZ lands that check to see if you run 2 basics. If you have 2 basics in play, they come in untapped, but they're also fetchable because they have the basic land type on them, like Island Plains. Following that, it's kind of a toss-up because you could say the Triomes, which are really good, but they always come in tapped, barring an Amulet of Vigor. So
Sure.
I personally tend to lean towards the Painlands. And I might even favor the Painlands over the BFZ lands. It's kind of a toss-up depending on what my deck's going to need. But knowing your land will come in untapped and that you can get that mana out of it is huge.
Yeah.
Which is why
And
a lot of people...
One life when you start at 40 is, I mean, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
here?
it's inconsequential. And generally over the course of a game, a Painland will do 3-4 damage to you at most, because by the time you get into the game, you're going to get other ones, and now it's just going to tap for colorless for you. It only needs to fix you in the early game, typically.
And how much life would you lose if you didn't have your color that you need?
Yeah. Yeah, because you miss that crucial play.
Right.
So yeah, I really like those lands, the Painlands, and it's interesting. They just, in recent years, they really seem reluctant to reprint them because I think they're realizing that they're still really powerful.
Yeah.
They're not fetchable, but they're still really powerful because you're getting your color on curve every time.
Yeah. I think they're trying to do more of a come into play tap thing in standard and,
Just slow the game down.
slow it down a little bit, So it's an ebb and flow. Who knows? Maybe they will reprint them in standard when they dumb standard down again.
Yeah, I was a little sad and a little happy. I was mixed feelings when today I was fingers crossed. I was hoping they were going to bring back the Painlands in Double Masters.
Right.
And it turns out they're not. They're bringing back the filter lands, but they're not bad. I think there were Shadowmoor originally, the filter lands. They are good. They've reprinted 1 or 2 of them a lot. Grave Karns has seen tons of reprints.
Yeah.
I don't know why specifically that one they keep reprinting, but not the others. But they have finally reprinted the others, so that's a good thing. It is a good land cycle. It is I'd say in the top 10 cycle of dual-esque lands that you can get. But I would have preferred personally Painlands, but there's still a good land cycle.
Sure.
So, we got any long shots out there?
So I think, we do have one, and this is one that I've kind of wanted to talk about for the last couple of episodes as long shot, but haven't because maybe I found something else that was more worthy of being talked about. And, it's interesting because you also wanted to talk about it today. So Tatiova from Dominaria, and it was reprinted in the mystery boosters.
Yeah.
First of all, and this is something that when I was doing my research on it, I guess I knew, but I didn't know, is the 32nd ranked commander of all time in listings of commander decks.
Yeah.
It's in 15% of decks in the 99 that can run her, which is huge. And prior to the reprint, I mean, she was at about $2.20, which quite honestly, I bought so much Dominaria that kind of shocked me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is an uncommon. It was already hitting in 220 from Dominaria, and which was highly open. So yeah.
Yeah, highly open. And as we talked about in the last episode, Dominaria booster boxes have been climbing. Dominaria individual card prices has been climbing. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that she would climb with it, because I mean, she probably is the best legend.
Second
uncommon.
best.
Second best.
Uncommon, hands down. Yeah. I thought you were gonna say legend period from Dominaria, but Muldroth still holds that title.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, she hit a low of $1.30 in June, just a month ago, and now at $2.20. I mean, that's pretty good.
No, now at $1.50. Sorry, she was at $2.20 just prior to a reprint in mystery boosters. And what I expected was that reprint was really going to crush her price, but it actually knocked it down about 50-60 cents. And we're now 2-3 months after, and it started to climb back up again. Granted, it's only about 15-20 cents from where it was, but that's 15-20 cents. And after a reprint, it tells you that its trajectory has just been a solid ramping up. Well, as you guys are seeing, I guess it would be this way, a solid ramping up. It just had a little dip from the reprint, and it's already going, okay, we're going to go back up again. I think right now it's just above the low that it was at following mystery boosters. If you want to get on this card, now's the time. And in my opinion, the fact that it's only 15% of decks that could run it, they need to step up, because this is a true value. It's become synonymous with the term value engine, Tatyova. And green likes to ramp, which means if you play lands in your deck, she's going to give you value. Odds are you're playing lands in your deck, because if you're not, you're probably not playing at all.
Yeah.
And green likes to play lands. For example, Cultivate. Green card puts one into play, basically play one in your hand. It's in 50% of green decks. If you're playing Tatyova, if you're playing Cultivate and you're blue-green, you should probably be playing Tatyova, because that's probably going to gain you 2 life and draw you 2 cards. And that's just Cultivate. Let's not forget about Kodama's
Fetch
Reach
lands.
and Rampant Growth and Fetch Lands. There is so much value in Tatyova that a price tag just can't quite contain it, you know? But right now, if you're trying to contain it, TCG in bulk, you can pick it up for as low as $1.09. That's the original Dominaria version, which is the version I recommend over mystery boosters.
Yeah, of course. And as a matter of fact, if you just go to your local game shop and if you can look through their uncommons from Dominaria, you'll probably find about 10 of them and grab them for about 50 cents a piece.
I did pick up one for $0.25 from a game store we freaking back in the day. That's when Dominaria was still out, but I thumbed through and was like, oh, yep. Definitely.
And if you'd like to purchase some from me, I've got plenty for sale at $1.08.
The lowest price around.
The lowest price in the land.
So yeah, the only reason I even think we consider this a long shot is because it did get reprinted mystery boosters, which means there's a chance that for more reprintings down the road. But if it does not see more reprintings, I think it was also reprinted in a Commander product this year or last year. I don't remember which, but I believe it was in a Commander product recently.
I think it was in last year's in the lands deck, but we could see this as a $3 or $4 uncommon at some point.
Easily
within the next year and a half.
Yeah.
So, I'd buy them at $1. It's definitely worth it. For sure.
Well, you know what?
So the next one,
it's time to call in the reserves.
Yeah. So we're gonna call in the reserves. So Hall of Gemstone is a card that is on the reserve list. It is a card that it's only played in about 1% of decks, so not overly played in Commander. I'm not 100% sure why, because it seems like
it's kind of busted. Tech. So it's for those who don't know, it's an enchant world. That's a old school term. An enchant world. There can only be one enchant world and play at a time. Concordant Crossroads is another one. There's very few that exist. Hall of Gemstone is one such that costs 2 green and 1, And during each player's upkeep, that player chooses a color. Until end of turn, each mana producing land produces mana of the chosen color instead of its normal color. So if they're not playing monocolor, you are going to cut them off from a lot of their mana.
Yeah.
It's kind of salty, super powerful.
Yeah, super powerful. This is a card I would certainly play.
I do, in fact, play it. I'm that kind of salty, evil person.
I love inducing salt comas. It's just wonderful to watch it just break down completely.
Yeah, and I think the only reason it's not in more decks is because this is a reserve list from Mirage. There's a relatively low supply of this card out there. Mm-hmm. So between cost and low supply, I think that's keeping people off it. Now, this card has had a double up in just the last 3 months, since March.
Sure.
And that supply is going to dwindle fast. If this is a card you want to run and play, you can pick up a lightly played for under $15. Highly recommended. You can even pick up currently near mint, very few, but near mint for around $15. Honestly, though, I would say if you can get near mint copies of this for under 18 right now, you should definitely do it. Despite the fact that there has been an obvious targeted buy towards this card, mm-hmm. It's reserve list, and the numbers of them out there are a lot smaller than you think. And it is definitely worth picking up if you think this is a card, A, that you'd ever want to play, B, as an investment. Just on the fact that it is reserve list, if you can still get in while the price is low on a very playable EDH card, you should jump on it.
Absolutely. So let's get into the reserve list a little bit. One of our viewers, Jeff, he had mentioned to us, and another viewer as well had mentioned to us that they'd like us to talk about reserve list and how the market works on that. We kind of shied away from doing that because, the reserve list is always a solid investment. Most people think that the reserve list is consistent and a great investment always, but that's not entirely true. It's probably the most volatile market because it's most susceptible to buyouts. You have people who love to go in and buy up every single copy of a card on TCG or wherever, and then the market is bare and the price skyrockets and they sell it off, and that's how that game is played. At some point people quit playing the game of Magic and started playing the game of Magic Wall Street. So and they tend to do it with these reserve list cards. Mm-hmm. So back to Hall of Gemstone, if you can get in on a reserve list card, especially a playable one in Commander, at $15, $20, under $100, honestly, it's going to be a solid investment. It is going to fluctuate. It's going to go up. It's going to go down. It's going to be all over the place. But when you're talking about reserve lists, you're always talking about a long-term investment. You're never trying to make money quickly. You're never trying to buy it up today and sell it next week. You're always
people in 2017 tried.
Yeah. You're always looking to buy it, hold on to it until the end of your playing days. Ultimately, I mean, you don't ever really want to get rid of this stuff. So
I look back at my beta Black Lotus when I first got out of Magic in the 90s with Exodus, and I think I got like $300, $400 for it maybe. And had I held on to that, obviously it's worth more. It's a long-term investment. It's not something when I look back then that I could have known that it would ever be worth what it is now. I thought maybe there was a chance, but then again, the game was 5 years old. Maybe I didn't think it was going to last another 5. It did. Surprise.
Yeah.
This point, there's not much stopping it other than WotC. But I say that I had a conversation when I was in Seattle last year for the Command Fest, and we were talking about the secondary market and how even if WotC shut its doors and stopped its presses today, right now, would the game of Magic die?
No,
Absolutely not. It has
not a
become
chance.
its own monetary system and its own living, breathing entity. Players would continue to play, the secondary market would continue to sell cards, and all that aside, somebody would come along with a bankroll and say, "I'm buying the intellectual property, I'm going to pick it up," because it's got a life of its own at this point.
Hmm.
So, investment, long-term investment in this, huge.
Yeah.
So my only regrets really in life were that I sold my collection off twice. The second time I was a
Yeah.
little smarter about it. I kept all my sets that I had, and I kept some of the more powerful cards I had, which were all in one prismatic 250 singleton deck, which
Hmm.
included all my dual lands among other things. But still, I've passed on a lot of really good cards.
Sure.
The Beta
And
Black Lotus among them.
haven't we all? Everybody has a story. If they've ever gotten out of Magic, or even if you didn't, and you've played since the beginning of Magic, I mean, everybody's got a story, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it is beneficial to invest in the reserve list, especially a card like Hall of Gemstone. I mean, I'm actually, when we get off of here, I'm probably going to go buy whatever I can of it. You know, just to put my money where my mouth is.
Hmm.
But I think everybody should, to what you can afford to do.
Yeah.
Not everybody can go out there and buy a Black Lotus for $28,000, because quite honestly, yeah, it's listed at 35, but nobody's paying 35 for it. They're taking what they can get.
Yeah, typically the only time that's slightly reversed is when it's super high grade, 9.5 plus.
Sure.
Then they're commanding higher than the typical market price
Right.
and getting it.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, it is volatile. So don't get into it thinking that you're going to sell it next week, next month, next year. You're not.
Yeah.
You're not.
And piece of advice when you're looking for ones to possibly buy, see if it's playable in EDH. See how much is played in EDH, and look at it yourself and evaluate. If you play EDH, you have a pretty good idea what's playable, what's not, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But also, before you buy into it, check the highest price listing. When I go in and I check prices, I check the lows. I see what's the lowest price, right? But I also go to that last button on the bottom on TCG and see what the highest listing's at. For example, there's a very slight nudge upward on the value of even Hall of Gemstone because there's a single listing at $75.
Yep.
The very next listing is like $24.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got one who's trying to push the value up. Now there's 50, 60, maybe 100 copies on TCG total, so it's not doing much to nudge it. But when you get into high power reserve list cards that there's not many of, say you're going to look up Force Field, there's maybe 20 up there, or maybe a Mox or Time Walk, there might be like 3 listings on TCG Player for whatever set ABU. If 2 of them are sitting at, say on Time Walk at $2,000, you got a third one sitting at 10 grand because it's graded, that's going to push the overall value of it up to like 3 or 4 grand because it's not got a lot to look at to get that average. So before you jump on a card reserve list, because of the volatility, check to see if someone might be manipulating the market. Check the number that are available and check the high end where those are at, because those are the ones that are trying to push the market value up.
Yeah,
So,
and that happens a lot. That's not just reserve list. In fact, we were looking at a card to talk about on the show 2 weeks ago.
Repentant Blacksmith?
I forget which card it was exactly. It's kind of unrememberable at this point, but we were looking at the trends and we saw like this common that was listed at $6, and it wasn't that old, and we were both just kind of scratching our heads. Wow, that's crazy. We go and check TCG. There's not a lot listed. There's maybe 3 pages listed, and guess what? The last one's listed for $10,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, that stuff kind of happens.
So
be careful about that.
Yeah, so definitely don't just go dive in FOMO on reserve lists. Look back to what happened in 2017, 2018. A lot of those cards and a lot of people who went in on that fear of missing out on a lot of reserve lists and bought in highs. You don't want to do that. Make sure you check what a true mid is by evaluating the top end to see if someone's trying to push that value up. So that's kind of what we have to say on reserve list. On occasion, we're going to throw some reserve list cards on here. We'll call in the reserves, as it were, and give you our opinion on ones that we think are legitimately good specs as an investment, but also as an EDH playable. Because ultimately, we enjoy playing the game, not just speccing. We like to do both. So if you want to just do this to make money, more power to you. There may be other channels and better avenues outside of Magic to just make money. But if you want to make money while playing a game you love, this is where you want to be.
Right.
And if you want to induce salt in all your friends, play Hall of Gemstone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Shall we let people know who the winner is?
Yeah, so this is pretty exciting.
First off,
are you sure? Are you sure you're ready to give away the $9 Sharknado? I mean,
$9.99 Sharknado.
Oh wow!
Now, granted, I told you I'm not giving away a foil one. I'm giving away a regular. I also bought the foils too. Those have also significantly increased.
Yeah.
So, to Jeffrey Hawthorne, congratulations! You're the winner! Bling 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 bling! Ah, confetti and everything. You are the proud new owner of this shiny, not so shiny because it's not foil, Shark Typhoon. And that's not all. Also this, a Sublime Epiphany. And if you thought that was everything and the best it could get, you're also going to get this signed by not only Trent Richardson, but also myself, Alternate Art Island. Ding! Thank you so much for your comments. In fact, we're going to talk about those specs that you commented on our episodes. First off, this is a very juicy one. It's very interesting because this takes advantage of a new rule in Commander on the death of your commander and how that triggers. So this is pretty spicy. And he pointed this out to us. It's called Necromanic Selection. It is a sorcery for 3 black and 4, so a bit on the pricey side, that is destroy all creatures, then return a creature card put into a graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. It's a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types, exile Necromantic Selection. Now, this new rule changes how this would work. So normally you could tuck your commander and say, well, you can't take my commander, right?
Not anymore.
Not anymore, because now the commander actually triggers hitting the yard. So Necromantic Selection in its resolution says, okay, it hit the yard. You don't get to tuck it. I'm taking your commander. It's mine. Which is pretty nasty to be able to semi-permanently take your opponent's commander and board wipe. Very nasty. This card currently, it's in about 2% of decks that could run it, which is roughly 4,400 decks out there. Being triple pips on the black makes it a little harder to splash. So beyond a 2 color, this could be a little hard to play unless you've got a really rich mana base.
Yep.
But all that aside, with this new rule, I really see this as a card that should see a lot more play than it currently is. And I think people just haven't realized it yet.
Yeah, I agree. And also, not to mention, when Jeff mentioned this to us, it was at $2, and today we are at $2.73.
Oh, I didn't even realize it had a jump up already.
Yeah, so very good spec, Jeff. I mean, just in a couple week time, we've got a 70-cent rise in the card. Man, good stuff, man. Very good.
I think people are figuring out maybe that new commander rule interactions. So definitely jump on this while you can. I'm betting there's a number of good. Well, actually, I bet there's a number. I haven't checked on it, but this is only printed in 2 commander products and nowhere else. So it's got a relatively small supply. So I would imagine that if you want this, go get it. Last time it was printed was Commander 2017.
Right.
Which in itself had a small supply due to a fire, if I'm not mistaken, at a warehouse or printer. So it itself had a smaller print run. Definitely a good spec, Jeff. Very good. You're earning back what you're getting from me here in good specs. we got another one here, right?
Yes, he also had another one, Simic Ascendancy, and this came about talking about the Ozolith. It was his interjection to talking about Ozolith on last week's episode. So yeah, this card definitely could be useful while using the Ozolith. It definitely has a combo piece with it. For those of you who don't know, it's a green and a blue enchantment. You pay a green and a blue, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and then it has another ability. Whenever one or more 1/1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters, you win the game. Man, yeah, you could win the game pretty easily with this in Commander, especially with the Ozolith. You go turn 1 Ozolith, turn 2 Simic Ascendancy, and then you just go crazy with 1/1 counters for a while. Sack a bunch of creatures. Maybe you're playing Sultai with some sack outlets.
Speaking of Sultai?
Sultai, or maybe 4-color Atraxa. Zaxara. I mean,
anytime you cast an X spell, you're putting all those counters into a Hydra, which is also putting all those counters on Simic Ascendancy. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at this. This card's currently running 6% of decks that could run it, about 6,400 decks in EDH. And Zaxara is on the list there, and it's only running 48% of those decks. I hadn't even thought about it until literally this minute. I have a Zaxara deck. And you were talking about, I was like, wait a minute, wait. I'm running Ozolith in my Zaxara, but I'm not running this. I could literally just straight up in a turn win with some of the X spells. Now, granted, sometimes when I cast that big of an X spell, I do just straight up win. But even without, that is just great tech, especially with an Ozolith where you're just going to shuffle them. If the creature dies, it just goes onto that, and then on your combat, it goes right onto another one, and poof, if it was enough, you just won.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And this card, since its release, has been kind of a stinker. It's been hovering around the 75-cent, 90-cent range. But, and granted, a lot of Commander-esque cards or cards that are able to be played in Commander decks, they have seen a jump since COVID. And we're going to see that for a little while. But this card, especially with the release of Ozolith, has the potential to double up from where we are at $1.61 right now.
Yeah, just since Ikoria.
In and of itself is surprising that this card is $1.61. Especially when you see where we came from before Ikoria at 89 cents. Mm-hmm. So just since then, it's had a double up. And, we could get up to $4 on this card at some point. This does not seem like a card that Wizards would reprint to oblivion.
Not unless they do a bunch of guild kits still, which I don't think I can continue to do that over and over. Or who knows? It's WotC. If they think they'll make a buck,
they can do whatever they want now. They can make four booster pack boxes for $5,000 with commons that have been upshifted to rares.
Mm-hmm. Don't get me started on double masters.
We can do anything now. Anything is possible, Charlie.
So I know a few weeks ago, if you watched all our episodes, we may have commented on the first or second episode about we thought that maybe VIP packs is like the definitive way to go, potentially, although they hadn't yet released the content, so we weren't quite sure. But I can now say, having seen the contents of the VIP, what you're getting, don't do it. It is not worth it, especially when some of your rares could be commons and uncommons upshifted to rare.
Yeah.
That's 8 slots. So
something that I actually got some info on today from a store owner, they are doing pre-orders of the VIP booster boxes only. They're not taking pre-orders of Double Master regular booster boxes because of allocations. from my understanding in my conversation with the store owner today, they're going to print the VIP packs to oblivion. They're going to keep pumping them out, and they're going to have 2 waves, 1 to 2 waves of the double masters, and then pull the plug. That's interesting that could happen. So, maybe this VIP pack is not the way to go for this particular set. And I guess only time will tell if that is actually the case or not.
Yeah, I'm all for the products for whales, the collector's packs and all. I'm all for that. But just like with the secret lair fetch lands, don't try and rip off the whales. At least give them value for the money they're giving you. They're propping you up in your product in your company. Don't do them like that. That's not cool.
I agree. Well, Hill, I think that's about all we have for this episode.
Yeah, it's a good episode. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah, we do.
Especially if your name's Jeffrey Hawthorne.
Jeff, you are the big winner today, my friend. And thanks again for commenting and liking and subscribing, Jeff. Maybe you could teach some other folks how to do such things, and they can win some sweet swag from the Commanding the Market boys, and get a sweet signed card and a sweet $9 card that wasn't $9 when it was promised. You know,
it was a double up since promised.
So yeah, congratulations again, Jeff. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and following along with us. It means a lot to us.
You guys are awesome.
It lets us know that there's some people out there who get a kick out of what we're doing. Never mind the fact that we know most of you, you know.
So if you also didn't, the feedback you guys have given us has really helped. And I know, you guys are the reason there was even a reserve list card in conversation on this episode. Yeah. You guys brought it up in various Discords and said, we want to hear about this. Can we hear something about this? And at first, Trent and I were reluctant, but we realized it's a conversation we should still broach with the audience. And there are still, despite the volatility, some good options out there as we discussed. So we love the feedback. Keep that coming. Keep commenting. Let us know what's working, what's not. By the way, for another out there, yes, I finally got my pop filter in, so hopefully that took care of the pops that were especially bad in the first episode.
And I did too. We got a Crown Royal bag on the microphone.
That is a classic gamer move there. The Crown Royal.
I just dumped the dice bag, Hale.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching. As always, this has been a blast. Continue commanding the market. And also, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and click on that notification bell. We're going to try and keep these coming every Monday to keep you up to date on what's worth picking up for EDH and for long-term investment. Until next time, Trent.
Keep commanding the market.